We look forward to any potential bird updates next podcast.
Oh, be careful. Be careful. I'm going to start looking them up. Be like, oh my gosh, you'll never guess what I saw on my walk today.
If that's what you're passionate about, I can't wait to hear you talk about it.
I can't believe I'm passionate about birds. Never did I think I would see the day, but here we are. The world feels chaotic and dark right now, and we want to bring a little light. So each week, we'll talk about a book we've read or are reading and our biggest takeaways. Maybe something we've learned, an aha moment, an inspiration, or simply how we've been entertained or encouraged or surprised by the plot. It'll just be a casual, down-to-earth chat between two book-loving best friends. Welcome to the Bookfluencer podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 8 of the Bookfluencer podcast. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Tiffany.
And we're here to talk about books. I'm going to be talking about A False Report, True Story of Rape in America by Christina Miller and Ken Armstrong. I teased it at the end of last episode, so you got to give the people what they want, you know?
And I'll be talking about Other Birds by Sarah Addison Allen.
There seems to be a theme going on here with you there, Tiffany, so that sounds fun.
Yeah, I'm excited. It was a good read.
Cool. And is yours a fiction book?
It is.
Sweet.
Yeah. I'm on a
Mine is nonfiction, but I read it like it was fiction. Like literally wanted to keep reading. So I read nonfiction in the morning to get my day started. And so I'm investing in myself before I get started. But I will put down a nonfiction book because it's nonfiction and I basically know what's going to happen, you know? But this book I did not want to put down. I did not want to start my work day. I wanted to say, forget everybody and keep reading.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, that's how I am with the book I'm covering next week. I read for 4 hours straight last night and did not want to put it down. Yeah, I sped through 200 pages. And then I was like, I need to sleep. I can't finish this book, but I'm really close.
Just one more chapter. Let me get there. Just one more chapter. I always bargain with myself. I'm like, well, and I count down to when I need to wake up. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, that's 5 hours. I can function on that amount of sleep, right? Never.
I kept laying up there and I was like, I should go downstairs and check on Squirt. I should, let her out. And I couldn't. I was just underneath my weighted blanket on the bed reading this book. It's been a while since I've had a book that I can't put down. And Madison told me that because he was the same way with it. That's why he recommended I read it. And he was not wrong. It moves real quick. It's real good.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Enough with the teasers for next episode. I'm already foaming at the mouth over here.
Sorry.
Do you want to go first or you want me to go first?
I think you should go first because I think your topic is a little heavier than mine. So we'll end on a bit of a lighter,
there you go,
more magical tone.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what is up with me in these heavy topics. I do know what is up with. I will always tackle the heavy topics. You're welcome or I'm sorry, depending on how you feel about that. So yeah, this book was recommended to me by a mentor and former colleague, Karen Miller. So I literally put a request in at the library right away and was able to grab it. And yeah, it read like fiction. I consumed the shit out of this book. Yeah, I mean, other than it reading like fiction, I just don't even know how else to say it. But also the way they organized the book was really captivating. So they started out with a story of a girl who was in the foster system and she made her way out of that foster system, was in this program where that helps people phase out of that system and get set up on their own 2 feet. So there's a discount for apartments. So she was in that system, got settled in her own apartment, was there minimum amount of time, and then suffers from a rape incident. Someone invaded her home and raped her for a couple of hours. Yeah. So you start out with this powerful story, and even that story ends with the fact that she ended up back at this place with this group of people, which is great, recanting her story and apologizing to the entire group for making this up. Right.
Wow.
So her story is interwoven throughout the book, and you're getting updates on what it's been like for her, how many times she's told her story, who did and didn't believe her. Spoiler alert, and one thing that made me want to throw this book at the wall was the fact that her mom figures, so she had two that she really kept while she was in the foster system, neither one of them believed her.
Oh my gosh.
I know. Can you imagine the betrayal and like, if my mom doesn't believe me, then who would? You're right. It never happens. Like I see why she would, go from point A to point B.
When you said she had to apologize for making it up, I'm like, can you imagine the inner turmoil and I would be so angry to have to sit there. Like, my body is the one that was violated, and I'm the one apologizing to you people because you don't believe me. Like, gosh, that just makes my blood boil.
It gets worse. She is in fact prosecuted for filing a false report.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What year did this take place? Oh, I don't even know if I want to know.
It wasn't as far back as you would like it to be, but it's probably farther back than what you would think. Let me pull up the Goodreads and figure this out. So the book was published in 2019, and it reflects on 2008.
So they had access to all sorts of like rape kits were a thing.
She went through hours of investigation of her body at a rape kit situation. She told her story twice while she was at the scene. She told her story again while the person who was taking all the evidence found out about her. And then the detective had her go to the station and tell her story again there, and then write out a statement. So she told her story no fewer than like 5 times on the original day of the event, which shouldn't be what you put someone through after having been through that.
Did they just like not find any bodily fluids or DNA from the perpetrator? Is that how
didn't
they
even get that far?
They didn't even.
Yeah, didn't even get that far. The rape kit was left untested, and by the time she had recanted, they destroyed it. Yeah.
Why didn't they test it?
I know this whole because the detective had seen idiosyncrasies or just things that didn't match up in her story. And I'm sorry, but you try getting raped for 4 hours, getting put through the ringer, and then having something vague detail differ in the written statement the 5th time she's telling the story from the first time. Like, come on.
She's traumatized. Your brain does not operate. Oh my gosh.
Had none of that training. It was like it's a small town in Colorado. He had none of that training. There were a few police officers. I wanted to get mad at this man a lot, and he did make obvious missteps, like not being a human being and thinking that I probably shouldn't charge this person with a crime, even if she did commit one, or like is admitting to having committed one. But he also felt really like he knew he fucked up by the end of the story. And even when the journalists were interviewing him, like they asked him the question and he had to leave. So I do feel like, and he eventually did write it. So the fact that you could have had someone that, like this police department, just totally stonewall and be like, nope, we didn't do anything wrong. This is what she said, blah, blah, blah. Eventually she was vindicated. So her story is only one of the stories that's told throughout this entire book because it's like interwoven, right? Meanwhile, her rapist is a serial rapist. And so you get the details on how he got started, a little bit of an interview with him, which is interesting, and later once he's in jail. And then also what happened after her rape, and the fact that these other ones, had there been a system where everyone was communicating together without having to be in the same room, had there been tools that are more at their disposal, had this rape kit actually been tested, had different law departments talked to each other, they could have at least stopped a few of them. They were ultimately able to find him, arrest him. He is, behind bars. And but it wasn't until after this poor girl Marie had already been charged with a crime and was serving probationary time. So outliving her life, but she can't make any other mistakes during that time. Outliving her life in probation before she's finally told, oh, by the way, we believe you because this motherfucker took photos and we found them on a camera when we were arresting him.
Did she sue?
She did. I think it was an undisclosed amount, though. It was like settled type of situation. I don't
I'm
have
glad
the book
she
anymore.
did.
I had to return it.
They completely ruined her life.
She had to obviously be very resilient in her life, being a foster child. And so I think that if she were having not had to deal with that earlier in her life, because I can imagine that when she was told that she wasn't, or, just started to get this pushback, that she just went into a different programming of her brain and just went on survival autopilot. Like, what do I have to do to survive this situation? And I don't know that a lesser human being would have been able to deal with that.
I wonder if that contributed to why they didn't believe her.
Probably. So she had
bias against her upbringing, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, her last foster mom is the one who spoke to the detective, and that's really what started this disbelief. So he added that to the fact of these like nuances in her story. And that all sort of came together to the fact that this didn't actually happen, which is just ridiculous. But yeah, so she had two moms in the situation. I forget what the one mom's name was, but a previous mom who was she was only in a foster situation with her for a little bit as they got a more permanent home ready for her. Her name was Shannon, so obviously I remember her name. So she had a lot of maternal feelings. She was sexually assaulted and had this experience that came into her with it. And she prejudged the situation, thinking that because Marie wasn't acting in a certain way, this probably didn't happen to her.
Because she was like, I know how I felt and acted after this happened to me, and she's not exhibiting those same emotions or whatever.
And her later mom, the one who had the foster mom who she was with when she turned 18, I don't know if she actually adopted her. I think her name was Peggy. She's the one who voluntarily called the police officer and was just like, there is a possibility that this didn't happen. I know.
It frustrates me. I mean, it frustrates me so much that this happened in 2008. Like, not that the past gets a pass for, like, not believing women in these situations, but we all know, like, technology took a while to catch up, training took a while to catch up.
Yeah.
People,
communication systems,
the acknowledgement of implicit bias, right? Like all of those things. But you would think in the 2000s,
right,
that at the very, oh my gosh, I can't
yeah,
even.
This man was able to rape several women outside of Seattle, Washington, and the Colorado area, definitely playing on the fact that these institutions didn't talk to one another. They did bring in the FBI to try and get a stopgap, but ultimately what happened was there were just these voracious, intelligent investigators and crime scene people who network and speak to one another and were able to connect dots that really may not have gotten connected if you didn't have like nerds going through different specimens that might have been found at the scene or different, patterns of behavior and then talking to one another.
Was that at the federal level?
No, that was at the local level. So it's like state crime people who go to conferences and talk to each other. And investigators, female investigators who, know that there are other females out there doing exactly what they're doing because, girl gang. Yeah, it was hard. It was a hard book to read, but it was also like, there better be a better fucking conclusion for this Marie girl than I think. You just keep paging through.
Mhm.
She should get some justice at some point here. And then even like at the chapter where they're searching the culprit's home, I'm like, fine, bro, what? Like I'm yelling at this book to try, which and I can't even, so like I get emotionally invested in these, as you can tell I'm literally yelling right now. But I get emotionally invested in books, whether they're fiction or nonfiction. And when it's fiction, I can say, this is only a book, this is only a book, this is real life. So you get real mad at it, right? Exactly like you're doing now.
Yeah. One thing, so I listened to the My Favorite Murder podcast, which is one of my favorites. And I mean, they cover a wide variety of true crime events. And one thing they often talk about, because they'll like discuss it as they're telling the story and like talk about advances that have happened since the time or, whatever. And one of the things that often comes up is a victim's actions or reactions or emotions and how that is judged and used either for them or against them based on somebody's perception of whether or not it's the right way to respond to what happened to them.
Mm-hmm.
And the more they talk about it, the more they're like, we've realized that trauma affects us all differently.
Yeah.
And the way our brain responds to it and the way that we choose to react to it, like that cannot be used as a basis for making any sort of judgment or decision because it's not going to look the same for everybody.
Right.
Like somebody might be sobbing uncontrollably when they lose their partner to a horrific crime. Other people might be in total, complete shock, stunned, can't even process, and there's no emotion on their face. Like both of them, that doesn't mean that one of them killed their husband, one of them didn't. Like,
right.
It's just you absolutely cannot use that. At least you can't use it alone. Right? Like if somebody is stunned and shocked, and then there are 10 other factors that say, oh, this is a peculiar situation. Maybe we should look into it. Perhaps you can use it as 5% of your decision making. But to be like, oh, you're not crying hard enough, that probably means that you were in on it.
Yeah, the fact that she recanted at one point and was just like, fine, I didn't do it. But then she went back and said, hey, like, no, this really did happen to me. And here's some like extra things that I remembered and whatnot. She went back twice to the police station. And it was a shame because the fact that she, just went with the flow after being so grinded with this situation and was just like, fine, it didn't happen. Whatever you say. That was like held against her this entire time. And I'm like, if you can't put yourself in that situation and realize like the answer to the question, how do I go home? How do I get out of this situation? Like, and you just choose to take that path.
If she sees no other way out. And that's another thing that I've heard discussions about with regard to true crime events is like how somebody can be persuaded to confess to something. Like if you're told over and over and over again that you're wrong and that you made this up, I can see how you could start to question yourself. I mean, I'm not sure, I can't be sure, but I imagine she wasn't questioning herself. She was just fed up and was like, how, like you said, how do I get home? How do I get out of this? But other people could, like, their mind could be bended and twisted. Like maybe I have an illness that I'm not aware of that's making me believe something that isn't true. Maybe I did this in an altered state. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it definitely made me think back to the Ava DuVernay's movie about the Central Park Five and how they were interrogated and they just want to go home. How do I just go home and stop this scenario?
Yeah. And if you're faced with what seems like an impossible task of convincing someone, then maybe you just say,
fine,
have it your way. Just let me go. Let me live my life. Let me heal. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm glad that she finally got some justice. Did they give any updates like where she's at now? Is she like back in her own apartment, or has she?
So she was really just like treading water and not doing well when she was not believed. Like she had a learner's permit going into this, her being raped. He actually took her learner's permit, and she never progressed to learning how to drive. After everything was resolved, she was actually able to start moving on with her life, picking up different pieces and and sort of getting a life more in line with what she deserves and what she wants, rather than having this unresolved issue really stuck in everything that she does. So
Yeah.
I was definitely happy to hear that, and the just natural healing that comes with being believed and being able to show up as fully like who you are. It definitely, it was either the writing or just the maybe what I'm putting into the situation, but it felt like her shit was all dammed up and then it just flowed effortlessly after that. Probably not effortlessly, obviously, but yeah, she was actually able to move on, which was nice to hear.
Yeah, for sure.
I just really wanted to comfort her, unfortunately. Um, I think that's probably a natural inclination for most of us, but couple of the good things that I like sort of noticed from this is the vast development we've had, as you said, in the awareness of how people deal with trauma and just the brain and mental responses and everything. I'm really glad we've come such a long way in such a short period of time, really. I also was really uplifted to read that this particular police department that obviously fucked up on multiple occasions, just owned up to it and was able to, find a resolution for Marie as opposed to like stonewalling her. And although I don't, the it didn't really seem like they put in a lot of steps afterward to make sure that this doesn't happen again. There was some effort, but I didn't get the impression that like you get past the what happened, okay, we're gonna have this report, and then like the actions were taken. Just like the okay, well, this is where we messed up. Yeah, and then just these like really fabulously talented people that are like boss at their jobs, from a crime scene person who digs shoes and is all about shoe imprints and like wanted to take all of these things, to the tenacious women police officers out there who are willing to believe people and willing to believe women and go to bat for them even outside of their areas and jurisdictions to really get that resolution. Those are all like super super great highlights to hear from such a book, from a book that was really just so dark.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can only hope that people do better next time, if there is a next time for that police department,
Yeah, hopefully not. We've also made a lot of strides. Like they were talking about these different systems because we kind of assume that, oh, there's a database for that. You just run it through the database, whatever. Well, that's a relatively new thing. And also having all of these systems that talk to each other to be able to like run through a database. Like there was an FBI agent involved in this situation just so that they'd have access to some of the records that are held federally. So what, you need a body to do that? I don't know what the whole thing is about it, but there is data that is out there that like wasn't necessarily fully accessible to people at that time, at that point in time, and it seems like we're making strides to codify things, whether it's like an MO or a concept of the crime or like the events that took place or shoe prints or duct tape or all of these little details can add up. So there are a few different databases that get talked about in the book, and it seems like hopefully in the last 10 plus years, the missing parts that were there in 2008 have come together.
Yeah, for sure. That is frustrating that like between states, you're right, they're really like, unless somebody picks up the phone and calls,
Right.
because they discovered some sort of connection to an area and they just want to cover their bases and see if that department knows anything. There's no way to just look and be like, oh, I wonder if this person has any history in these neighboring states,
Mm-hmm.
which is sad. And because, I've heard a lot of crime stories about somebody perpetuating a crime in one state across the border from where they live, and they're not caught for decades because nobody thought to look outside of the town where it happened. So yeah, I'm glad to hear that they're working on some national database access because
I think the moral of the story is probably that it can happen to you, and just try to be smart about life, because the people that, like the women, it wasn't just Marie, it was, I think, at least a dozen other women, of all shapes, sizes, colors, consciousnesses. I don't know how else to say that, but there were just a lot of different women who all fell prey to this. I think he describes himself as a monster, because he has these like urges. So yeah, tough book, but worth reading, worth getting that information on your side, and talking about it with your friends, because these poor people found themselves in these situations that are just like, what do you do?
Yeah, and that's one thing I've learned from all the stories I listen to is like you have to be your own best advocate because you can't always trust or rely on law enforcement or other agency personnel to be an advocate for you, or even in this case, your own family to be an advocate for you. So the more you know, the more questions you know to ask, the more buttons you know to press.
Right.
Which sucks, but
yeah, today's world, man, or yesterday's world, I guess, 2008. All right, hopefully you're gonna pick this podcast up a little bit, though. A good call on the order.
Yeah, I think I am gonna pick this pod up. Okay, so I read Other Birds by Sarah Addison Allen. I think I mentioned in last week's episode, but this was a recommendation from a literary agent who I follow, whose agency I really like. She and another agent at her company do these little YouTube sort of book reviews, and they talk about what they've been reading and what they like. And she had recently read this one. I don't know if it was this year or late last year. So I was like, ooh, okay. If I want to query her one day, maybe I'll read what she likes and see if it aligns with my style.
Awesome strategy.
Thank you. So I really, really enjoyed this book. It is fiction. It has some elements of like magical realism and fantasy, but it's very much like our current reality based. It's not like a new world that exists. So the magical realism comes in like the main character has a pet bird that's invisible, so nobody else knows that this bird exists except her. Yeah, and there's some like ghost activity in this apartment complex where they all live, and the story even incorporates the perspective of the ghosts, so like why they're there and who they're attached to. But it's like only the people who have that attachment know that their presence is there. The other people around like aren't aware. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's interesting. Yeah, so the story, it feels like it's about one protagonist. Her name is Zoe, and she just graduated high school, and she moves from Oklahoma, where her dad and stepmom live, to this apartment in Mallow Island, South Carolina. And the apartment is like owned by her deceased mom.
Oh,
So when like her father married her mom, who's now deceased, he purchased that like condo for her.
okay.
And so it's always just been in her name. And Zoe is about to attend the College of Charleston in the fall for school. So during the summer, like as soon as she graduates, she's like, peace out, Oklahoma. I'm going to go live in my mom's old apartment. And the reason for doing that is because she feels this connection to her mother, but doesn't really know a lot about her because she died when she was young. And so she's like, maybe if I go live in this place where she was, like, I'll find something that belonged to her, or I'll get some sort of closeness that I've been missing for the rest of my life. So that's what draws her to this place. But it's a really small little complex, and it's called the Delawisp. And that's named
Ooh.
after a bird that there's this like little flock of birds called Delawisps that live in the garden of this area.
Mhm.
And there's only like 4 condos there. So she moves into her mom's condo, and then there's 3 other, oh, maybe there's 5 condos. There's 4 other people
Okay.
that become like the other big characters throughout the story. So she feels like the main character, but the different chapters jump into the other characters' perspectives and brains. So
Okay.
it's not first person, it's all third person, but like you'll get to know who they are, what brought them to the Delawisp, and which like attachment they have that's sort of keeping them grounded in the past. Because that's like the big theme is like each person in this story has some sort of attachment that's haunting them, a loss that's haunting them.
Literally.
Yeah, literally haunting them. And some of them are like positive, right? Like, I mean, the loss is all negative, but some of them are like a really positive, loving connection that they won't let go of now that it's gone. And some of them are like not so positive, that are just sort of hanging around because they're this like fear.
Okay.
Yeah, fear of what's happened in the past and that it might come back again.
This is giving
Um,
very like only murders in the building vibe so far.
yeah, I mean, it's really cool. And so like throughout the story, Zoe becomes friends with these odd characters. Um, and by the end, they all sort of resolve these attachments that they have.
Mhm.
But what I loved is that there is one plot twist. I'm being intentionally vague about the details
Sure.
because it's like that's one of the best parts of the story is all the little details of everybody's journey to how they got there, and their connection to this particular place. But there was a plot twist that I did not see coming. I literally gasped when I read it. And
Yeah.
that was so much fun for me because you know how normally you can predict like there are clues throughout and you're like, they're going to reveal that this is the thing. This is the linchpin or whatever. I did not, I had no idea. And so when when the author revealed it, I was like, oh my gosh, like that makes so much sense. But I didn't even see it coming. So that was fun. Um, but yeah, I mean, it feels like even though there are some heavy topics, like with these attachments that the characters are facing and the losses they've endured and how they're trying to move forward, there's a lot of heavy stuff, and
Sure.
you can really relate on different levels just in terms of being a human and what you go through as a person. But but it feels like a light read, like a if that makes sense. It doesn't feel very weighed down, just in the way that she tells the story.
Okay.
Um, and even though it takes place in present day South Carolina, it almost feels like a period piece just because the town of Mallow Island has like this rich history, and almost like one of the characters in the story, um, they always refer to this guy who wrote a book called Sweet Mallow or something like that about the history of the town. I
Okay.
think it may have been fiction, but based on true. I'm not sure exactly. I'd have to go back
Seems
and
like
see
it
what the
had an
book was about.
impression on the town, obviously. Do you have to visit, or are you inclined to visit like the periods from the ghosts from wherever they were, or is it mostly in the current time?
It's all in the current time, but when the ghosts have like their chapter to say things, they'll refer to things from the past. So it takes you back maybe like a generation or two when they talk about things that have happened. Um, but it sort of just feels, I mean, we know like the South has a lot of history as it is. And
Yeah.
so it's like you think about like Southern hospitality, but also, the dark side of the South. And yeah, I just kind of, it placed me there. Maybe it's because I'm also really familiar with Charleston, because that's where my
Yeah.
sister went to college. So like I could really feel like when they talked about some of
Right.
how
Like
the
as
place
the
looked.
ghosts are relating their experience, it's like you're falling on a story within a story, right? And so
Yeah,
you might go back to that time period just in their telling of a story.
yeah. But it feels, yeah, like present, but also past, and very much grounded in that place.
I'm
So
intrigued.
it's really good. I think you would like it. And it's a quick read too. It's not even 300 pages.
Okay.
So yeah, like you would breeze through it. But it's really cool. Like the connections that the author makes between the people who are drawn to this place, the Delois, and how it came to be, and like the secrets that each of them don't know about themselves, but that really define who they are,
Mm,
that eventually like bubble to the surface, and how they forge connections. Like a lot of their attachments to the loss and to the ghosts that haunt them
mhm.
are what prevent them from becoming vulnerable and making deeper
Right.
connections in the present, because they're like, nobody's going to understand this. Like, how am I going to explain this to somebody else? I have to keep people at a distance so that they don't see my past. They don't see who I actually am.
Hmm.
And so working through that to come to a point where they can have these deep, meaningful present day connections where people see them for who they actually are, including all of their pasts, and you know what how they face what haunts them or who haunts
Yeah,
them, and whether or not they decide to let go. Yeah,
it's a lot. It
it's a
sounds really
lot.
interesting though. And it makes sense. Like, why are you haunted by something? Because you can't move on from that. Why do ghosts haunt? Because they can't move on from something. So, yeah,
Yeah,
this
all
theme of moving on seems very in tune with the tools that the author is using to tell that story.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting because all of the ghost perspectives say, I'm here because this person won't let go of me. Like it's not
Ah,
their choice to be there, but
right.
their presence is still around because the person who's living hasn't let go of them.
Hmm.
So that part was interesting to me too, like that sort of ghost like concept of being a ghost, right? Because
Yeah,
a lot of times you think like ghosts
they have
choose.
something. Right.
Yeah. But they're like, no, my spirit lingers because there's somebody here who loves me and needs me and won't allow me to move on.
Ooh.
So that was an interesting part too, in like how the living control what it is that haunts them, even if
Hmm.
they don't recognize yet that they have that control.
Yeah, dude, your brain is a really funny place to be in because, like, sometimes until someone points something out to you, you're not thinking about it that way. You don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily see how you present yourself to the world or how you react, or, maybe you're not making these connections or like a through line, and having a therapist, a ghost, a friend, whatever you're
Yeah.
using, point out, well, hey, girl, you've flipped out 5 times when you're talking to this person. Maybe you shouldn't do it anymore, whatever
Yeah.
it is. Um, sometimes you need that because you're too inside of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so like lots of different moving parts, but they all connect like in a really seamless way. It all makes sense. Nothing seems like extraneous or forced. Every piece moves the entire story toward its culmination. So like, just, yeah, altogether really, really good. And this author apparently has written a lot of other books. I've not explored any of them, but highly, highly recommend, especially this time of year. I feel like it's great little.
It's
Spring or
definitely
summertime
Southern
read.
Gothic era, like word time, you know? Because like the breeze comes through and you're like, yes, I'm there in this moment right now, you know?
Yeah, yeah, that's part of what I loved, like just the scenic descriptions and the tactile experiences of the characters really placed me
Cool.
there. Yeah.
Well, I love this book for you. I wrote it down. Maybe it'll be a plain read for me in the future. Um, love, love, love.
Yeah.
Okay, so do we have any updates from last pod? I don't think so. So, Prince Harry is going back for because
Right.
Prince Harry's going back for his dad's coronation, Mr. King Charles, which I think is happening in the beginning of May. But the word on the street is that he's going. Meghan's not. Meghan and the kids are staying in California. So that seems to be a really nice way for him to like tread that line between being there for his family and not endangering his new family, the mental health of his new family. So I thought that was interesting and very in keeping with our discussion in Spare.
I like that.
Any updates for you?
I don't think so.
Okay. So on to mental health moment. My mental health moment is addressing the realities of my brain function at this point in time. So I think that based off of years in academia, we have reached the I don't give a fuck point of the year.
Okay.
Because this is always the time where you get towards finals and you'd be grinding so hard and like in my brain needs to let up in order for me to process that kind of information because I would 1,000% over prepare and then end up freezing on the final or whatever you're talking about. Also the fact that our birthdays are coming up, that probably adds to it too in this beautiful spring weather. So I'm in peak give few fucks era of my life at this point in the year. And I'm just gonna sort of start to embrace it. Whatever has to get done will get done. And doing less at this point in time sounds like a really good idea for me.
Yeah, I like that. Also, I never considered the correlation between like we spend so much of our formative years on that school schedule where this time of year really is like, get me out of this building, get me off this campus, get me out of these classes. So as an adult, you know, we probably have some lingering feelings, even though our work continues past May, early May.
Yeah, I realized it in college because despite my best efforts, once the weather starts turning, I can't even make myself care that much. But I care a lot regularly.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe it's like that effort and ease. There are certain points in the year where I'm in ease. So this is that.
Great. I like that. I'm gonna borrow that. My mental health moment is and maybe I wrote this to be loneliness with my book this week, but listening to the birds. I went on a walk yesterday. We were talking before we started recording that I had a bit of a hard morning yesterday. That was really emotional. Decided to go on a walk. Sat on a little bench along the path through the woods and just listened to the birds, listened to all the different sounds that they made, watched some little chipmunks chasing one another. And I realized that I'm becoming a bird lady. And I'm okay with that. I never, until this year, understood why people gave a shit about birds. Like, Sometimes I even was very annoyed by birds. You know, when you like are at the beach or you're at the pool on vacation, they're trying to steal your French fries. They're always following you around trying to get bread. Like,
Seagulls are the worst for sure.
yeah. And now every time I'm outside, I listen intently to them. I can't wait to see them. I stare at them because they're beautiful. I'm like amazed and in awe of birds. And I'm like, I don't know if you just like reach a point in your adulthood where you become a bird person and then for the rest of your life, all you talk about is birds, but I'm getting there.
Enjoy. They are giving you wings at this point in time. Sounds fun. I don't think I can get on this bird train with you, but I appreciate that the sounds and sights of nature are very calming and very fun at this point. So good for you, girl.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I've always like felt a little connected to nature. Like it just brings me a lot of peace. Not the bugs. I'm never going to be a bug person. Let's just say that. Or like flying insect person.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like creatures and trees and, you know, sunshine and being outside in the fresh air has always brought me a lot of peace. But yeah, lately it's these birds, man. I talk about them so much more than I used to. I don't know what's happening to me.
I was charmed by the sound of cicadas the other day because it's that time of year. So maybe similarly, you know, it's what you're into
Yeah,
right now.
that's what I'm into.
Well, we look forward to any potential bird updates next podcast.
Oh, be careful. Be careful. I'm going to start like looking them up. Be like, oh my gosh, you'll never guess what I saw on my walk today.
If that's what you're passionate about, I can't wait to hear you talk about it.
I can't believe I'm passionate about birds. Never did I think I would see the day, but here we are.
Well, you got a lot going on in your life. So a simple hobby that brings you great pleasure sounds like exactly what you need.
Yeah, I think so too. I
Great.
think so too.
All right, y'all. Well, feel free to share with us your mental health moment on socials or wherever you want to share that with us. And we will see you next time around when we talk about more books.
Woohoo!